Hello guys, welcome back to LR Anime. Guys, please like the video and subscribe to my channel. Today is explanation of BTTH Rebirth of Emperor Yang episode number 155 based on novel. So let's start. On the void, he saw the fierce flame rising in Xiao Yang's hand. Lu Cheng's horror was more unspeakable. At the same time, at the bottom of his heart, he couldn't help but surge up a sense of fear. If Xiao Yang didn't have such a powerful soul power in front of him, he might be sure to knock it down, but at present, the shock brought by the latter to him is unprecedented. Relying on the soul power of the third-order herbalist, Xiao Yang's combat power will be greatly improved in front of him. Lu Chengke will not think he has the ability to kill him when he can't take full advantage of fighting spirit, body power, and soul power. Besides, let's not mention the terrible appeal, that is, relying on the soul power alone. In this regard, the keen insight of the herbalist is recognized all over the continent. Now, only those equally terrible array mags can compare with the herbalist in the field of soul power. Unfortunately, Lu Cheng is not an array mage. After a secret comparison in the bottom of his heart, Lu Cheng couldn't help sinking. In the current situation, not only did Xiao Yang make it difficult for him to deal with, but also there was a Jin Yarrow beside him. The two worked together. If they really wanted to deal with themselves, it was a problem whether he could leave Yang Cheng today. Damn. Can you only leave in such a gloomy way? At the thought of the current situation, Lu Cheng was unwilling. But on second thought, it would not be a wise choice to defeat two with one. What's more, neither of them is an ordinary person. If he hesitated more, he was afraid it would be bad. Damn it. Smelly boy. Jin Yao, I'll write down what happened today. I'll ask you to pay it back in the future, he scolded in his heart, and at this time, Xiao Yang on the opposite void suddenly gave a cold hum in his nose. Suddenly, Lu Cheng only felt that the heaven and earth were trembling slightly. Invisibly, even the temperature between heaven and earth was quietly rising, as if a war was coming. Boy, you're great. That's all for today, but you must remember that I'll get this account myself sooner or later. With his eyes fixed on Xiao Yang, Lu Cheng scolded with an unyielding anger. Well, as long as you dare to come to the door, I'll accompany you at any time. Under the golden light, Xiao Yang's pale face looked cold, and his tone did not give in at all. This was also Lu Cheng's angry face twisted for a while, but in the end, after he put down an angry hum with hatred, his body turned and flew away quickly in the direction outside the burning city. Behind him, he was full of cynical eyes, also followed, until the end of sight. On the contrary, when these people look at Xiao Yang peacefully, they look respectful again. Even those faces are rapidly accumulating humble smiles when Xiao Yang looks at them at the moment. However, Xiao Yang's pale face couldn't help showing a sneer at the people's reaction. Although he didn't want to pay attention to these people, he couldn't help laughing in his heart. When he was trying to retreat Lu Chengzhen, everyone's eyes to him would be full of pity and ridicule. However, now, when the war situation changes, the eyes of these onlookers have changed, but this so-called transfer is shameful. It's funny to think about it. The tone in his mouth was not salty, and he whispered a sentence. Soon, Xiao Yang's heart moved, which scattered the body of King Kong Glass. At the same time, Jin Yarrow was also a delicate body, and quickly came to Xiao Yang with a grateful smile. However, just when Jin Yarrow wanted to praise Xiao Yang with a smile on her face, she saw Xiao Yang's pale face at a glance. Immediately, the expression on her pretty face couldn't help changing. Then she wanted to come forward to help Xiao Yang, but she was gently shaken by the latter and stopped. No, it's just some minor injuries. It's not like what? Just have a rest. It's not careless now. The guy hasn't really left yet. If he finds out, it's really troublesome, Xiao Yang said with a little difficulty in his voice. At the same time, his eyes slowly turned and looked in a direction outside the city. With his super soul power, Xiao Yang can easily explore Lu Cheng's position. At the moment, just as Xiao Yang said, he didn't really leave, but wanted to observe the situation in the dark. Unfortunately, when Xiao Yang looked so deliberately, he immediately knew that he had been found. Now, he can't do without leaving. A moment later, when Xiao Yang's soul power realized that Lu Cheng really left, Xiao Yang on the void took a long breath, immediately shook his head and moved his body. Under the careful care of Jin Yarrow, he left the void, and the onlookers gradually dispersed with the departure of Xiao Yang and others. In the courtyard, Fang Qian and Dong Chuan gradually woke up from the shock just now. The two elders looked at each other and looked at each other for a long time. Finally, Dong Chuan spoke first and said, "Maybe we need to see him." Hearing the speech, Fang Qian nodded approvingly. They couldn't bear to miss such a young cultivation genius. At the same time, in another courtyard in the city, Xiao Yang and Jin Yaro also came here. This is Jin Yaro's residence in Yangcheng. As a whole, it is not a small other garden. At this time, the courtyard where they are located is just a corner of the whole other garden. Are you okay? Jin Yaro looked at Xiao Yang with a worried face, and a look of self-reproach appeared on her pretty face. Xiao Yang was injured because of her. Now Xiao Yang is injured for her, but she is unharmed. How can this make her mood stable? Hee, don't worry. I've practiced a fighting skill recently, but I can't master it completely now, so I'm just relieved of my strength by the shot just now. That guy's punch doesn't hurt me. Cough. The sound of comforting words laughing in her mouth just fell, and then a cough came out of Xiao Yang's mouth. Suddenly, a touch of embarrassment appeared on Xiao Yang's pale face, which also made Jin Yaro burst into laughter. From Xiao Yang's point of view, Jin Yaro's posture at this time, it's much more comfortable and natural than she usually pretends to be delicate. With a smile in his heart, Xiao Yang also stopped thinking. In the twinkling of an eye, Xiao Yang sitting in the armchair actually fell asleep. Carefully listening to the sound from Xiao Yang's nose and the orderly breathing sound, Jin Yaojiao twisted her body, bent her waist like a water snake, and sat down on a seat opposite Xiao Yang. Her moving soft body lay lazily on the stone table. A pair of beautiful eyes looked at Xiao Yang, who was sleeping in the blink of an eye. Her red lips pursed slightly and smiled. In the courtyard with grass everywhere, several pine trees stand tall. The sun falls and shines a huge shadow on the ground. A sparse aperture with the size of a little palm passes through the gaps between the leaves and falls in the shadow. Near the north wall of the courtyard, there is a small pond. The water trace in the pond is clear, and the bottom of the pond can be seen. The pebbles at the bottom of the pond are all over. They are paved, and there are water and grass condensation. They are deliberately arranged into a word gold, which is obviously deliberately arranged by people. There are other swimming fish in the pool. They run between water and grass and are leisurely. Although they are exposed to the sun, they are obviously not afraid of human beings. Otherwise, they would have fled and hid. In the middle, beside a low plum tree, there are 2 stone tables and stone chairs, which are placed opposite. On one of them, at this time, there is a beautiful woman with a charming body sitting in the middle, lying lazily on the stone table and falling asleep. Well. Suddenly, the woman's delicate nose gave out a low groan. Then, her whole person woke up leisurely. At the moment of opening her eyes, she saw an empty stone chair opposite her. The original figure had already disappeared. Suddenly, Jin Yaro was surprised. The spirit that had not fully awakened in her mind seemed to be stimulated. The whole person sat up from the stone chair for a while. Mai Mao hurriedly turned with anxiety in her heart. The guy would not leave quietly without saying a word. But then, when Jin Yaro's eyes turned to which pond, the breath tightly held in her chest was suddenly relaxed, and her body was as soft as a vented ball. At this moment, on the edge of the pond in the courtyard, Xiao Yang, wearing a black robe, is sitting on the green stone with her back facing her. His eyes are closed and his hands are tied with cultivation knots. With the breath between his nose, a faint energy of heaven and earth also comes to Xiao Yang. At the moment Jin Yaro woke up, Xiao Yang seemed to be aware of it. His closed eyes slowly opened. A golden light flashed through the depths of his eyes, and a smile appeared at the corners of his mouth. Then he got up from the blue stone and turned to Jin Yaro. "Wake up?" Xiao Yang asked with a smile. At the same time, he lifted his feet and came to the stone table. "I thought you left without saying goodbye. It really startled me." Seeing Xiao Yang who came up and sat down, Jin Yaro nodded gently and immediately said with a smile. Hearing the speech, Xiao Yang couldn't help laughing. Then he looked up at Jin Yaro opposite and said, "I've been to An from Yangcheng this time, but I want to ask you for something. How can I leave without saying goodbye?" While Xiao Yang's words fell down, Jin Yaro suddenly felt in her heart, and then spoke again. It seems that Xiao Yang's brother doesn't really miss his sister, but his sister's collection here? Xiao Yang grinned and smiled. "Tell me what you need. Maybe I really have it here." Seeing Xiao Yang's appearance, Jin Yaro stopped teasing. The smile on her pretty face converged, went back to business and asked. Hearing this, Xiao Yang was also impolite and knew his intention. After hearing Xiao Yang's words, Jin Yaro could not help but frown deeply. Her pretty face showed a thoughtful appearance, which made people dare not disturb easily. More than 10 minutes later, Jin Yaro sighed faintly. A look of helplessness appeared on her cheeks. She looked at Xiao Yang with a frozen eyebrow and whispered, "I'm sorry, Huolinghua. I don't have any information about it. I'm afraid I can't help you this time. Hearing this, Xiao Yang's face full of sigh, and he could not help but show a lost look, but Xian even reluctantly smiled and comforted Jin Yao. It doesn't matter. The fire plume flower is a very precious medicinal material. I can't find it so easily. I just want to take a chance when I come to Yangcheng this time. Since I don't have it, it's no big deal. Although he said this, Xiao Yang still couldn't bear to be hurt. Huolinghua is directly related to his strength. Now his search is fruitless and he says he doesn't care if it's false, but according to the current situation, he is also helpless. Or, you can go to the auction house to have a look. Maybe they have some auctions. Even I don't know the inside story about some valuable things auctioned in them, but you are different. You are a third-class herbalist. Those guys are eager to get on with you. Maybe you can find the fire plume flower with their strength. Hearing the speech, Xiao Yang suddenly thought of something in his dark eyes. Jin Yaro's words suddenly gave Xiao Yang hope. Perhaps he could really help himself find the fire plume flower with their strength, but not by auction. Hehe, Sister Jin Yaro, thank you. Maybe I can find the fire plume flower. With this in mind, Xiao Yang immediately showed a warm smile on his face and smiled gratefully at Jin Yao. Then, when his body moved, he got up quickly and touched the void with his toes. In a twinkling of an eye, Xiao Yang's body had appeared in the air. But then, just when Xiao Yangang wanted to do something, the pupils of a pair of painted black eyes suddenly contracted. Together with the expression on his face, he was stunned. His just floating body was so fixed on the void. Later, Jin Yaro also hurried to the sky and wanted to ask Xiao Yang exactly, but when she just appeared next to Xiao Yang, she was also at the same time, and her eyes noticed the two elders standing in front of them at this time. These two people are the steward and president of Qianyun Auction House, Fang Qian and Dong Chuan. On the void, the four people stared at each other without saying a word, and the atmosphere suddenly became strange. However, to Jin Yaro's surprise, it seemed that the two people had not seen her from the beginning. All the minds of the two guys seemed to be on Xiao Yang standing beside them at the moment. Over the burning city, the sun was shining high and the blue sky was thousands of miles. The hot sun fell into the city below like an invisible fire mass, making the already noisy city more restless. At this moment, far above the sky, the four figures are standing in the void, completely ignoring the hot and impetuous heat between heaven and earth. In the void, Jin Yaro looked at the two old men who appeared in front of him. The expression on their pretty faces became a little solemn. From now on, their intentions didn't seem kind. Of course, it was just Jin Yaro's personal doubt, but she couldn't be sure that the fact was like this. Seeing the three people in the field, Jin Yaro couldn't help frowning slightly. Immediately, she took a bold step forward. Her delicate body was slightly on one side and stood in front of Xiao Yang. First, she respectfully saluted the two elders in front of her, and then said with a slightly apologetic tone, "The previous thing is that our 1000 medicine workshop is not good at doing things. If you disturb you too, please forgive President Dong and Manager Fang. This so-called thing is naturally the battle that took place in the city not long ago." Jin Yaroquan thought that these two people came to trouble Xiao Yang for this reason, so he said so. As soon as Jin Yaro said this, he stared at Xiao Yang's two people, and only then did he return to his mind. Even Xiao Yang behind Jin Yaro was slightly shocked and recovered from his short absence. Then, when Xiao Yang looked up, Dong Chuan and Fang Qian couldn't help smiling on their faces. It made Jin Yaro suspicious. Was he wrong? Hehe, the leader of the gold workshop is worried. Lu Cheng's temperament is not correct. He is regarded as everyone's right. It's just that he has a special identity and it's inconvenient for us to take action. Today, I saw this gentleman's action frustrate his spirit. I was very happy about it. How could I come to trouble him? It seems that he saw Jin Yaro's inner thoughts. A kind smile appeared on Dong Chuan's old face, and his words also showed his dissatisfaction with Lu Cheng. However, when this word came into Xiao Yang's ears, the latter couldn't help but be surprised in his heart. He didn't believe it. But Dong Chuan said that Lu Cheng had a special identity, which Xiao Yang couldn't help being curious. Although Lu Cheng's strength is not weak, looking at the whole western region, there are countless people stronger than him. There must be many people who hate his bones. However, since he can live well until now, Xiao Yang will not believe that he has no background. When Xiao Yang recovered and continued to look at Dong Chuan, the latter also continued to speak in Jin Yaro's slightly embarrassed eyes and said with a smile, "In addition, you and I belong to the forces of Yangcheng. We are a family in Yangcheng. We should share a common hatred in the face of people outside Yangcheng. How can we complain about Chenyaro workshop? Isn't this tantamount to being in collusion with Lu? Well, as soon as Dong Chuan said this, Jin Yaro was stunned on her pretty face. Then, while her face changed rapidly, she quickly apologized to Dong Chuan with an apology on her face. President Dong, don't get me wrong. I don't mean to be a concubine. Tianyun auction house has always been upright. How can I be a concubine? You don't have to explain to the leader of the Golden Square. I understand. But now I'm not looking for you, but I hope to invite this gentleman to our Tianyun auction house. Jin Yaro's voice didn't fall, but Dong Chuan's voice changed and explained the purpose of his trip frankly. When Jin Yaro regained consciousness, Xiao Yang behind him also raised his eyes and looked at the two old men opposite with a smile. When he looked at Fang Qian, the latter politely arched his hands at Xiao Yang, hugged his fists and said with a smile, "Sir, it's been a long time." Seeing this, Xiao Yang also saluted with a fist and said, "Fang Guan, long time no see." I've heard this guy mention Mr. a long time ago. He said that Mr. A is the dragon among people. He's one of the few leaders he's seen in the younger generation. Now I can see that Mr. A is really handsome." Fang Qian aside, Dong Chuan echoed. "The president is serious. I can only rely on luck to have today. Compared with those real cultivation talents, I really can't boast of being a leader." Smelling the speech, Xiao Yang threw a fist, shook his head modestly and sighed. Seeing this, Dong Chuan can't help nodding in his heart. He is young and promising, calm, arrogant and impetuous. Such a mind is necessary for anyone to achieve great things. Not to mention, with this alone, Xiao Yang is enough to make Dong Chuan pay attention to it in his heart. Sir is too modest. Luck is also a part of strength. If you can win the favor of luck, it shows that you have that talent and will be able to achieve something great in the future. Dong Chuan opened his mouth with a half-flattering smile. Xiao Yang also smiled non-committally. Immediately, he looked at Jin Yaro and said with a smile, "In fact, I was going to look for you. Unexpectedly, I just started and met you here. It can be regarded as a soul." Xiao Yang chuckled. Dong Chuan and Fang Qian were surprised. They looked at Xiao Yang and found that the latter was also staring at them. Immediately, they looked quickly at the city below. Good and bad people are mixed in the city. Mr. Xiao Yang would better go to the auction house first. Taking back his eyes, Fang Qian continued to look at Xiao Yang and said in a condensed voice. Dong Chuan nodded slightly. The purpose of their trip was to narrow the relationship with Xiao Yang. Since the latter wanted to do so, they naturally wanted to invite Xiao Yang to their auction house. Hearing the speech, Xiao Yang turned his head and looked at Jin Yaro. The meaning revealed in his expression seemed to be asking the latter whether to go together. "Go ahead. There are still a lot of things waiting for me to deal with in the 1000 Medicine Workshop. Remember to come back to me when you finish." Aware of Xiao Yang's meaning, Jin Yaro thought for a moment in her heart and gave up the idea of following. While her words fell in her mouth, she stared at Dong Chuan and seemed to be deliberately warning them. This was not just for Xiao Yang. When they noticed the different charm in Jin Yaro's words, they both smiled knowingly and didn't say anything more. As for Xiao Yang, after hearing Jin Yaro's words, he nodded slightly and didn't seem to notice anything, but virtually, the muscles at the corners of his mouth rose slightly. In Jin Yaro's opinion, the two guys sing in harmony and speak better than they sing. No one knows whether the words they just said are true or false. If they recognize Xiao Yang's identity and want to kill him, isn't Xiao Yang a sheep in a tiger's mouth? If she is outside, maybe they can respond at a critical moment, but once they follow him and start, it's really like beating the dog behind closed doors. Xiao Yang doesn't know whether her trip is safe or not. Although she can ensure Xiao Yang's safety, being outside can also frighten the two people and make them stop making more ghost ideas. Of course, on the other hand, Jin Yaro naturally hopes that the two people don't have any other thoughts. Otherwise, she will try her best and rush into the auction house, bring Xiao Yang out safely. Seeing Jin Yaro turn and leave, Xiao Yang sighed and turned to look at the two old men in front of him. The leader of the gold workshop seems to be quite concerned about Mr. Just as Xiao Yang turned around, Dong Chuan turned his eyes away from Jin Yaro with a sly look, and then turned his eyes back to Xiao Yang, with a slightly teasing smile in his tone. "The reason why you are looking up and down is not just to say these words." Hearing Dong Chuan's words, Xiao Yang frowned slightly. He didn't like to entangle more on this issue. Aware of Xiao Yang's sudden change of speaking attitude, the two old men couldn't help but be a little stunned. Immediately, they put away the idea of continuing to joke, led the way, and quickly flew away with Xiao Yang in the direction of Tianyun auction house. After a short moment, Xiao Yang and Dong Chuan appeared in the small courtyard where they lived before. The courtyard is set up in the auction house and guarded by the auction house. It is indeed the safest place in Yangcheng today. Without consent, no one can go deep into the soul power here. Of course, if a high-level herbalist makes a move, especially a third-level herbalist like Xiao Yang makes a move himself, the result will naturally have to be said twice. Falling into the courtyard, Xiao Yang turned his head and looked at the dark walls around him. His eyes couldn't help but show a touch of surprise. The four walls stood tall and almost wrapped up the courtyard. If a strong man passed over the auction house and didn't carefully explore it, he would really be unable to notice the existence of the courtyard. If no one probes here deliberately, it will definitely be ignored. Moreover, in order not to be disturbed, the whole courtyard has no entrance and exit at all. The only direction that can let it choose to leave is the sky above. Hehe, this small courtyard was specially built by the two of us. It can be regarded as our private place. We usually hide it with the help of a ray. Looking at the whole Yangcheng city, no one knows its existence. Sir, it is the third person who can come here except the two of us. It seems to be to melt the previous embarrassing atmosphere. This time, Fang Qian's opening immediately brought the relationship between Xiao Yang and them closer. As soon as this remark came out, Dong Chuan on one side also echoed and chuckled. His smile seemed a little embarrassed. It seemed that he was worried about whether Xiao Yang still cared about his words. Seeing this, Xiao Yang smiled faintly. He didn't care much about the previous things, but he didn't expect to be treated like this by the two guys in front of him. Sir, what happened earlier? The president doesn't have to care. It's just a joke. I can only say that I don't like this kind of joke. Before Dong Chuan's voice fell, Xiao Yang smiled and said he didn't care. Hearing the speech, the latter breathed a sigh of relief. Xiao Yang seemed to be as angry as before, but he was quite nervous and worried. After all, he was such a young third-class herbalist, not to mention his Tianyun auction house. Even if any force saw it, he would take the initiative to make friends with him, but his previous actions almost pushed him out of the door. How can this not make him nervous? Until now, after hearing what Xiao Yang said, the huge stone hanging in Dong Chuan's heart fell to the ground. Seeing this scene, Fang Qian also showed a smile on his old face, immediately turned his eyes, smiled at Xiao Yang again and said, "Oh, by the way, from before to now, we always call Mr. So, but we don't know what the name of Mr. is. Can you tell me too?" As soon as Fang Qian said this, Dong Chuan immediately turned his eyes to Xiao Yang, and his heart was also very curious. Who is this young man in black robe in front of him, who can not only improve the medicine refining technique to such a level, but also cultivate both fighting spirit and physical strength to such a powerful situation? It is reasonable that such a person, it shouldn't be nobody. Hearing the speech, Xiao Yang was also stunned. He immediately turned his eyes and said with a smile, "It's natural. Since I'm here, I'll naturally tell you my identity. However, before that, I want to invite you to see something." Seeing Xiao Yang's mysterious appearance, Fang Qian and Dong Chuan couldn't help but raise their eyebrows slightly. A suspicious color appeared on their old faces. Immediately, they looked at Xiao Yang together and stared at the latter curiously, as if they were waiting for him to take out such things. Xiao Yang smiled, but he couldn't help thinking of a man. A young hero in white, with extraordinary strength, can be described as the first person Xiao Yang saw in his life. But in addition to these, the most important thing is that he is still Xiao Yang's friend and brother. The biggest feature of this person is holding a jade fan. Taking back his mind, Xiao Yang's eyes fell back on the two old men in front of him. Under his sleeve robe, a white palm slowly stretched out and was exposed to the air. Although the courtyard was surrounded by high walls, when Xiao Yang's palm stretched out into the air, it still looked white and bright. The two old men stared at Xiao Yang's outstretched palm, and the look of curiosity in their eyes became more and more strong. Until a moment, Xiao Yang's heart moved. With a flash of light, in the twinkling of an eye, between Xiao Yang's outstretched palm, a jade fan more beautiful and white than Xiao Yang's palm appeared in Xiao Yang's palm. At the moment when the jade fan appeared, in front of Xiao Yang, the expression on the faces of the two old people was also instantly solidified. The two pairs of turbid old eyes stared at the jade fan in Xiao Yang's palm. There was a shock on their faces. However, they could not imagine that this jade fan representing a special identity would appear in the hands of the black-robed youth in front of them. In the courtyard surrounded by high walls, three figures are standing in the middle, which are Xiao Yang, Fang Qian, and Dong Chuan. In the small courtyard at this time, Xiao Yang's face was flat, his eyes looked calm as before, one hand stretched out to the void in front of him, the palm was facing up, and in his palm, a white jade fan stood upright. In front of Xiao Yang at the moment, Dong Chuan and Fang Qian stared at the jade fan in Xiao Yang's hand. A look of surprise appeared on their faces. They never expected that the fan would appear in the hands of the young man in black. Until a long time later, when they gradually recovered from the shock, they slowly raised their heads. First, they looked at each other and saw a touch of surprise in their eyes. Then, they turned their eyes to Xiao Yang, who was holding a jade fan at the moment. The expression on the faces of the two old men gradually became dignified, and their eyes were fixed on the person in front of them. Virtually, the fighting spirit in their bodies also quietly circulated. "Excuse me, sir, where does this fan come from?" Suddenly, as the president, Dong Chuan hugged Xiao Yang heavily, and even the tone and title of his speech changed. While the words fell, Fang Qian beside him also locked his eyes on the black-robed youth in front of him, and a pair of dry palms under his sleeve robe slowly closed and held them up. As a third-order herbalist, Xiao Yang naturally noticed the change of the two old men in front of him, but he also knew that this matter was related to the owner of the fan, and they had to be careful again and again. Gifts from friends. Xiao Yang was not in a hurry. He took the jade fan in his arms. At the same time, he stared at Dong Chuan in a flat tone. "Well, this is what we most want to hear. But how can you prove that this fan is indeed a gift from others?" Dong Chuan nodded and just answered, but then he spoke again. His words were still full of doubt. At the same time, Dong Chuan stared at Xiao Yang with more dignified and profound eyes. If the person in front of him couldn't answer at all, no matter how he cultivated his talent, he couldn't leave here today. "My proof is my identity." Xiao Yang was still plain, and the words he uttered were not forbidden to make the two people frown slightly. "What kind of proof is this? Then please prove it. If you can't prove your identity, I'm afraid my brothers will ask you to stay here for a while," Dong Chuan said in a slightly somber tone. While other words were spitting out, a faint fighting light also gradually surged up on the surface of his body. Fang Qian on one side also gushed out his fighting spirit. Once the situation changed, they would take Xiao Yang down immediately. "I'm sorry, Xiao Yang." Xiao Yang smiled faintly and opened his mouth gently. While the four words were spitting out from his mouth, his heart moved. With the moment his words fell, in the void in front of Xiao Yang, a gorgeous flame suddenly rose. With the moment the flame rose, the temperature in the small courtyard where the three people stood suddenly increased a lot. Even many plants planted in the yard turned yellow quickly. "You are you Xiao Yang?" Looking at the gorgeous flame rising in front of them and hearing the words in Xiao Yang's mouth, the two elders will not doubt that the person in front of them is definitely Xiao Yang, who is famous in the whole western region now. "It's good. Do you believe it now?" Xiao Yang smiled and nodded. The jade fan was presented to Xiao Yang by Luo Jin when he left Lungsue City, so that Xiao Yang could find help in time when he was in trouble and needed help in the future. At that time, Xiao Yang knew that the so-called Tianyun auction house was connected with Union Pavilion, and on the surface, the two had nothing to do with each other, but in fact, they are all forces under Luo Jin's command. When he first learned this, Xiao Yang was also very surprised, but he was relieved at the thought of Luo Lao. Luo Lao is such a powerful existence that he is supported by the old man. If Luo Jin wants to establish a force, it's really not difficult. Recently, I've heard that Mr. Xiao Yang lost 4 families in the ancient ruins a few months ago. I always wanted to see him, but I didn't expect to see him now. My brothers were disrespectful to me. I hope Mr. Xiao Yang won't be surprised. After confirming the identity of the person in front of him, Dong Chuan's old face immediately showed an excited look. It had been reported that if Xiao Yang came one day and needed help, no matter how much human and material resources, everyone in Union Pavilion and Tianyun Auction House must cooperate with him, and the person who gave the order was the leader of Union Pavilion, Luo Jin. At first, he just expected to see Xiao Yang one day. After all, Dong Chuan attached great importance to both the latter's talent and his relationship with Luo Jin, but he didn't expect that now, this opportunity came, and it seems that the latter also came with a purpose. However, after thinking of the previous events, Dong Chuan still felt a burst of shame in his heart. At present, he bowed to Xiao Yang. On an old face, he was also full of apology. President Dong doesn't have to worry about it. What happened just now is just for the sake of insurance. It's human nature. Under the circumstances just now, President Dong still has doubts about me, which I admire in my heart. If it were me, I'm afraid all doubts would have been dispelled when I saw the Buddha Jade fan, and once the other party is false, I'm afraid I'll put myself in danger. President Dong's approach is also the safest way to ensure this. Seeing Dong Chuan bowing and saluting, Xiao Yang quickly picked him up. At the same time, his eyes turned and his mouth was also half flattering, laughing. Hearing this, Dong Chuan looked at Fang Qian and smiled. Although everyone knew that Xiao Yang's meaning lay in comfort, who would mind others praising himself? The three people talked and laughed and flattered each other, and the atmosphere in the courtyard became warm again in an instant. I heard that Mr. Xiao Yang seemed to have something to do with us, but I don't know if Mr. Xiao Yang needs any help. If we can do it, we will try our best to help you. Suddenly, Dong Chuan turned and asked Xiao Yang again. Now that his identity is clear, Dong Chuan will naturally try his best to help Xiao Yang. Unlike what he said earlier, this time, he not only gave orders because of Luo Jin, but also hoped to narrow the distance between himself and the latter. It's just like what the other party said before he didn't know Xiao Yang's real identity. It would be a pity if he couldn't attract such a cultivation genius. As soon as he said this, Fang Qian also looked at Xiao Yang. If he could get closer to Xiao Yang, it would undoubtedly be of great benefit to them in the future. They would not miss this opportunity. When it came to the subject, Xiao Yang's face recovered quickly. After a little hesitation in his heart, he raised his head, looked at Dong Chuan and said, "Yes, I came to Tianyun auction house this time. I really hope to find a medicine for me with the help of you too." As soon as Xiao Yang said this, the two people in front of him immediately smiled. Obviously, Xiao Yang's words were expected by them. As a herbalist, I'm afraid I only have medicinal materials when I come to the auction house to look for Danfang. Hihi, I don't know what medicine Mr. Xiao Yang needs. Just mention it. As long as I have it from Tianyun auction house, I will not be stingy. Even if I don't, I promise I will find news for Mr. Xiao Yang within 1 month. Dong Chuan grinned, patted his dry palm on his still healthy chest, and had a look that everything was wrapped in me. This scene also made Xiao Yang feel more comfortable, and his heart's favor for them all at once improved a lot. Now, the ice elixir is very important to Xiao Yang, but the fire plume flower is one of the key medicinal materials for refining the ice elixir. Now it is difficult to find the clue of the fire plume flower with his own strength, but it would be different if he could use the power of Tianyun auction house. Well, thank you, President Dong. Xiao Yang smiled on Dong Chuan's face when he gave Dong Chuan a heavy fist, but then a look of expectation rushed into Xiao Yang's eyes. A pair of dark eyes stared at Dong Chuan in front of him, and asked with expectation in his words, "I don't know if there is Huolinghua in the auction house?" As Xiao Yang's voice fell, the two elders in front of him could not help frowning slightly. Obviously, they also heard about this kind of fire plume flower. However, despite this, they frowned and fell into meditation. For Xiao Yang's needs, they also hoped to give the greatest help. But unfortunately, after a moment, Dong Chuan shook his head with a frown, indicating helplessness, while Fang Qian beside him still frowned and fell into meditation. "No, this fire plume flower is of high value. In our impression, we have not heard of it for more than 10 years, and it seems that we have never handled such medicinal materials in Tianyun auction house." Hearing this, Xiao Yang couldn't help but flash a lost color on his face, but soon, Xiao Yang raised his head again and asked again with a sigh in his eyes. Since you don't have it here, he doesn't know whether the branches of Zhongtianyun auction house in other cities will exist. No, Tianyun auction house has special rules. Anyone whose auction value is too high will be recorded. We, the president of the division, will also see those lists. In my impression, there are no fire plumes in the lists we have seen. Xiao Yang's voice didn't fall, but Dong Chuan interrupted it with a helpless face. Hearing the speech, Xiao Yang's face couldn't help looking a little ugly. Unexpectedly, even Tianyun auction house couldn't find the whereabouts of Huolinghua. Doesn't that mean there's no hope to find Huolinghua? Tianyun auction house has power all over the western regions. Even they can't find it. I'm afraid other ordinary forces can't get it either. At the thought of this, Xiao Yang's heart couldn't help being unwilling. He had a hard journey in order to collect the medicinal materials for refining ice elixir. Now he sees that the medicinal materials are about to be collected, but at this critical moment, he lacks the fire plume flower. What can he do? Damn. Can't you really find it? The heart was unwilling to roar. Xiao Yang's heart was horizontal. The palm under his sleeve robe suddenly clenched, and a fierce look appeared on his face. It's really not good. Go to the western wasteland to try your luck. Although it's steep, most of the strong are there. Maybe there's hope to find Huolinghua. Don't worry, Mr. Xiao Yang. After all, huolinghua is a rare precious medicinal material with high value. I heard someone mention it not long ago. It seems that this medicinal material was indeed found in a certain mountain range, but it seems that someone has succeeded in advance. I don't know the exact news, but please stay in Yangcheng more in a few days. Our Tianyun auction house will make every effort to find out the trace for Mr. Xiao Yang. Can you? When Xiao Yang was full of loss, suddenly, the silent Fang Qian seemed to think of something and solemnly opened his mouth to Xiao Yang. Fang Qian's words were undoubtedly like a life-saving straw. When Xiao Yang was about to sink into the mire, they fell into his hands, which rekindled Xiao Yang's almost desperate heart at this moment. Are you serious? Xiao Yang suddenly looked up and stared at Fang Qian. His words were full of endless excitement. Mr. Xiao Yang can rest assured that I Tianyun auction house will definitely do my best to find the fire plume flower for Mr. Xiao Yang. So, please. Fang Qian opened his mouth and smiled. Xiao Yang's face looked more and more excited. He didn't expect that Fang Qian's words would make him find hope again at this critical moment. If you too can help me find the fire plume flower, I promise you will reward me with 2 fourth-order pills in the future. Facing the 2 people in front of him, Xiao Yang said firmly. As soon as these words came out, Dong Chuan and their faces couldn't help but flash a look of surprise. What pill was it for refining, and it could make Xiao Yang make such promises? As the sky gradually became dark, Xiao Yang had been in Tianyun auction house for most of the day. However, it did not affect the 3 people chatting in the courtyard. Ha ha, it's really God's will. I didn't expect that the 4 families vied for the inheritance of fighting spirit. In the end, they actually cheap the narwhal snake. It's nothing to draw water with a bamboo basket, ha ha. In the courtyard, Dong Chuan listened to Xiao Yang's story with a smile on his face. He also knew about what happened in the ancient ruins a few months ago. After learning that he fell into the mouth of narwhal snake under the coincidence of fighting inheritance, Dong Chuan couldn't help laughing. For the 4 major doors, they have no good feelings with Tianyun auction house. Now they feel very happy when they see their people eat flat. What's more, the object these people want to deal with is Xiao Yang. But then again, as far as I know, in the last trip to the ancient ruins, few of the 4 families succeeded in coming back alive. Presumably, this matter has spread among the 4 main gates. These forces are bound to make their own actions. Mr. Xiao Yang should be careful. Looking back, Fang Qian looked at Xiao Yang with a slightly dignified face. They all knew the gratitude and resentment between Xiao Yang and the 4 major sects. Even if Xiao Yang's means were not weak, he was facing 4 powerful sects that had stood in the western regions for hundreds of years. The inside information was so strong that ordinary forces could not compare with it. As the saying goes, 2 fists can't defeat 4 hands. Xiao Yang alone can't fight against the 4 main doors after all. Fang Qian also hopes that Xiao Yang can be more cautious in future. Hearing this, Xiao Yang also nodded solemnly. Although cold frost took him away from the ancient ruins at the critical moment, he was not the only one who left at that time. The sudden disappearance of Narwhal Snake and Bei Wang in the presence must be suspicious, especially Zhuo Lin, the son of the Zhuo family. Anything in his eyes will be regarded as unusual. The latter will not believe that Xiao Yang died in the energy storm. By the way, Mr. Xiao Yang, the guy you met during the day is also a member of the 4 major gates, and he is also a member of the Zhanwu sect who is good at physical strength. As soon as he mentioned the 4 main doors, Dong Chuan seemed to suddenly think of something. As soon as he took his eyebrows, he opened his mouth to Xiao Yanning. As soon as he said this, Xiao Yang couldn't help but pick his eyebrows slightly. When his eyes turned, he couldn't help asking, "You mean Lu Cheng?" Yes, Mr. Xiao Yang should have seen it in the daytime. The physical strength of that guy is not comparable to that of an ordinary strong man fighting against the emperor, and this is all because he is a man of the warring martial arts clan. Dong Chuan's face showed solemnity, while Xiao Yang's eyes narrowed, and a clear color appeared on his face. No wonder Lu Cheng's physical strength was so powerful. It turned out that he was the man of Zhanwu sect. The whole clan of Zhanwu sect is good at physical strength. The mutual condensation of fighting spirit and body makes its combat strength far better than ordinary strong people of the same level. Just like Lu Cheng, on the premise of relying on physical strength, he can beat Jin Yao of the same level. Nevertheless, Xiao Yang had no half regret for what he had done during the day. There is a lot of gratitude and resentment between him and the 4 major sects. In addition, Jin Yao once shot for him. Today, even if there is no relationship in front, Xiao Yang will try his best. With this in mind, The folds just frowned between Xiao Yang's eyebrows immediately disappeared. At the same time, Fang Qian in front of him spoke again. Lu Cheng himself is nothing. Although he is a 2-star fighting emperor, it must be based on Mr. Xiao Yang's strength. He doesn't have enough teeth, but it's just a troublesome thing. Behind the old boy, there is an elder of Zhanwu sect. The old guy has a very high seniority and his strength has reached the level of 4-star fighting emperor. You have to be careful in the future. Thank you for telling me. Hearing Fang Qian's words, Xiao Yang nodded solemnly and immediately thanked the latter for his heavy fist. Seeing this, Dong Chuan and others also threw fists in a hurry. After knowing the identity of the latter, they were more respectful to the third-order herbalist in front of them. At first, they only knew that the person in front of them was a third-order herbalist, and their goal was only to expect the pill refined by the latter, but now, compared with the pill, they pay more attention to their relationship with the latter. After talking and laughing for several times, it was getting late. Unconsciously, in the middle of the night, a thin silver glow was sprinkled on the treetops on the moon, covering the whole burning city. In the courtyard, there were bursts of laughter and the three talked happily. During this period, the two elders skillfully questioned Xiao Yang's origin and background from time to time, but they were easily answered by Xiao Yang with a smile. They were surprised in their hearts. What's more, even the two of them almost fell into Xiao Yang's discourse trap. Suddenly, they couldn't help but show an embarrassing smile on their faces. Such an interesting atmosphere lasted for a long time. If no one bothered, the three people must be able to talk until dawn. At this time, outside Tianyun auction house, a woman in red dress came here with a full body of ferocity. Dong Chuan Fang Qian, get out of here. With a roar that shook the whole Yangcheng city, in the twinkling of an eye, the dim Yangcheng city immediately seemed to be on fire. Pieces of lights quickly filled the city. The whole city that had been silent was suddenly awakened at this moment. The figures kept flying into the sky, and their eyes, either impatient or curious, looked in the direction of the voice. Finally, in the eyes of everyone, there was only a gorgeous woman in a red dress. At the same time, the three people who were chatting in the small courtyard were suddenly shocked back by the roar like thunder. The three people looked up to the sky together. Xiao Yang, a third-order herbalist, naturally recognized the woman's body first. This woman in red dress is naturally Jinyao. Immediately, Xiao Yang's body, who was sitting on the chair, got up and stood up. The whole person woke up like a dream. In his mind, what Jinyao said to him when he left in the daytime told him to go back to the 1000 medicine workshop to find her after he finished his work, but he didn't want the three to talk. It was such a moment. This is Jinyao. I almost forgot her. At the same time, Dong Chuan, who is sitting next to Xiao Yang at the moment, can only think of the look Jinyao looks at them during the day. Immediately, there is a subtle feeling in their hearts that their wife will catch a man home. However, although the two people could hardly help but want to make fun of Xiao Yang, then they remembered the look of Xiao Yang when he was angry with them. The look in their eyes was cold enough. The two old men looked at each other and smiled at each other. When they reached their words, they took them back bitterly. At the same time, they also got up and turned their eyes to Xiao Yang. Mr. Xiao Yang, I'm really sorry. Just talking, we seem to have forgotten the leader of the gold workshop. This. At the end of the speech, Dong Chuan gave a slight tone, looked at Fang Qian and remained silent. Alas. I'd better go. It's my fault. I forgot what I agreed. She must think something's wrong with me here now. Xiao Yang's heart contains an apology. It's his fault. If he hadn't told Jin Yaro the reason first, he wouldn't have such a situation like this at the moment. With a helpless sigh, Xiao Yang's body moved, and his body in black robe turned into a streamer in the night, which made people can't see the slightest trace. However, in a short time, Xiao Yang's body had been standing high in the air, his eyes turned, and his vision quickly fell on the woman in red dress over Tianyun auction house. Then, behind Xiao Yang, Dong Chuan followed. At the same time, a cold killing intention also appeared on Jin Yaro's pretty face. For nearly half a day, Xiao Yang hasn't seen the latter since she entered Tianyun auction house, which makes Jin Yaro worry about it in her heart. The terrible momentum and pressure is like a huge mountain above all the people in the city. At this moment, in the whole burning city, except those who have reached the level of fighting emperor, others have turned pale, and even some people with poor strength are forced to vomit blood and regress on the spot by this pressure. The imposing power of a strong man fighting against the emperor is not easily resisted by these ordinary semi-emperors. Of course, among these semi-emperors, Xiao Yang will not be included. Seeing Dong Chuan and Jin Yaro appear in the void, the coldness is even worse in her beautiful eyes. The whole cheek is filled with endless cold killing intention. If something happens to Xiao Yang today, no matter how much she pays, she will hurt the yuan qi of Qianyun auction house. Dong Chuan, where is Xiao Yang? Give him to me. Jin Yaro's tone was cold. Together with the temperature between heaven and earth, it was also strangely cold. When Dong Chuan heard this, they couldn't help looking at each other with an embarrassed face. If it's true, once a woman starts a storm, no matter how strong the other party is, I'm a 5-star fighting emperor. I was scolded by a 2-star fighting emperor. I'm afraid I would have done it if I hadn't watched the other party's relationship with Xiao Yang. Cough. I'm fine. At this time, Xiao Yang, wearing a black robe, slowly raised his head, pulled off his black robe and looked at Jin Yaro opposite with a smile. Seeing that Xiao Yang was all right, the boulder raised in Jin Yaro's heart fell to the ground. Then her delicate body flashed in a flash and appeared in front of Xiao Yang in the blink of an eye. A pair of beautiful eyes glanced around Xiao Yang until it was confirmed that the latter had not been hurt. Jin Yaro was relieved. However, when looking at Dong Chuan, there was also a color of vigilance, which made the two people quite helpless. With their strength, if they really want to do something to the people in front of them, will they wait until now, just because of his Jin Yaro? It's just a 2-star fighting emperor. It's really nothing in front of the 5-star fighting emperor. Hee, don't worry. I'm fine. I had a good talk with my 2 brothers today, so I talked more for a while. On a whim, Xiao Yang smiled faintly, but at the end of the discourse, he couldn't help showing a touch of embarrassment. Jin Yaro saw that a pair of smart and beautiful eyes twinkled slightly. Then, it was immediately clear in her heart. It seemed that the person in front of her was not persecuted by the 2 behind her, but she ignored what she said and forgot. The red lips were turned away, and there was a warm and angry expression on her pretty face. Then, Jin Yaojiao's body turned, and a pair of beautiful eyes swept over the distant void. The people attracted by it were shocked and retreated. Immediately, Jin Yaojiao's body moved, and quickly left here with a sense of resentment in her heart. Behind him, Xiao Yang looked at Jin Yaro, who turned and left in amazement. At the same time, the 2 elders behind him also cast pity eyes on Xiao Yang. Well, just tell me. I can't tell the truth. I really don't know that women are glass hearts. They can't be touched. The 2 old men looked at each other and couldn't help smiling bitterly. Later, they could only see Xiao Yang asking for more blessings. Mr. Xiao Yang, you'd better hurry up and have a look. It's too late to enter the house. Although he didn't want to joke about Xiao Yang in his heart, Fang Qian couldn't help teasing at the end of his words. Hearing the speech, Xiao Yang frowned. He didn't bother about this problem. He arched his hands at the 2 old men in front of him, and then quickly caught up with him as soon as he turned his body. Until Xiao Yang left, Dong Chuan and his wife touched each other's eyes again. Then they shook their heads and sighed helplessly. As soon as their body turned, they fell towards the courtyard below again. You don't seem to have told me about the fire plume flower. Falling in the courtyard, Dong Chuan couldn't help asking with doubts. If Fang Qian hadn't opened his mouth today, he really didn't know that the latter would have news about Huolinghua. Alas, that's not true. I've heard people mention the fire plume flower, but it's just a coincidence. I'm not sure whether the fire plume flower really exists. I didn't say it today. It's just a delaying measure. I hope we can really find the fire plume flower. Hearing Dong Chuan's words, the room shook its head helplessly, and a dignified color appeared on the old face. The latter couldn't help but pick his eyebrows slightly, and was shocked. It's crazy that Fang Qian's words were actually used to film Xiao Yang. You guy, haven't you thought about how to tell him if you can't find the fire plume flower? Xiao Yang obviously attaches great importance to the fire plume flower. If you can't find it. If we can't find it, our relationship with him will be completely broken. Before Dong Chuan's voice fell, Fang Qian immediately opened his mouth. At the same time, the dignified look on his face was even more serious. Tomorrow I will send someone out to look for the whereabouts of Huolinghua in all the large cities in 11 Linyu. Anyway, try it. I can't live up to his hope. Dong Chuan said with a wrung eyebrow. Hearing the speech, Fang Qian nodded first, and then gently shook his head. He hesitated for a moment, and then condensed his voice. No, send someone right away before tomorrow. This video will end here.